thank you for coming by to have a little chat with us about increasing our ministry with young adults. And I want to start off by talking about that great presentation you gave at annual conference this year. And I wanted to talk about a quote that you gave at that annual conference presentation especially. You said that it's not all that surprising that young people aren't in our churches. Could you talk a little bit about what you meant by that and what caused you to think that as well?
Sure. So I think there are several things that have caused young people to not be in our churches. One, I think that with the way people are raised today, the way that parents are raising their children, faith is not a focus or not a major focus in a lot of families. And so young people from a small age when they become young adults don't have that foundation or that background. The other thing I think is that many young people have been hurt by the church, whether it's in something that happened with them personally, or the way that they were treated maybe when they were in youth group, or whatever their experience may have been where they felt hurt. They're not returning to the church to heal that pain. And so with the combination of all of those things and the squelching of creativity and the not wanting to hear new ideas, being afraid of what that might bring to the church, we're kind of very hesitant in the change. And so I think the combination of all of those things, it's not very surprising that young people aren't in our churches.
Great, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about that creativity piece. Yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing a lot is talking about those relationships aren't being built in order to help people or young people be brought into the church in a way that increases their faith and helps them be a part of the church in a holistic way. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, I think at conference we talked a lot about relationships, and when we are more hesitant to build the relationship than to keep our traditions, I think that's when there's that major disconnect there.
Great. So one of the first things and one of the most important things that we're going to talk a lot about today is worship. And that is, you talked about at annual conference that worship is a great way to bring young adults and young people in general into the church and involve them in a lot of great ways. And so something that I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of different processes that bring about worship on a weekly basis. So in your experience and in the churches that you've been involved in, how has worship been crafted? What has the process been?
Well, so as a kid, I grew up in a very contemporary worship space. I wasn't really involved in a lot of the planning in that, but every week it was very different. Worship kind of took a different form. Some of the same elements every week, but things were changing, kind of constant change. Now that I'm a pastor and in my own congregation planning worship every week, it's a much more traditional setting. So worship looks pretty similar each week with all of the same elements. So we follow kind of just a basic worship format.
Great. And so when you talk about you and we in that, do you get with a group of people to help bring about worship for the church in a whole, or is it just you, or how's that work out?
Well, so when I started a year ago,
okay.
And at the beginning it was just me. I put the worship together, organist picked all the songs, and that was kind of it. Now we just recently we started a worship team, so we get together monthly, we try, and plan kind of month by month worship. So, and that involves all aspects of the service.
So has it been helpful to have more than just your own, well, I guess the voice in your head, but more voices to help you plan that worship as well?
It makes it more complicated in some ways, but it's definitely helpful to have other ideas and feedback. And that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be more of a group experience so that it wasn't just my ideas, because I'm limited by my own creativity. So having other people be a part of that has been really great.
And do you think that transfers into something different than what you started with on a Sunday morning?
It hasn't yet, but my hope is that it will, and that new ideas will kind of spring up, and we can pull on the ideas of other people to make worship more dynamic.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I always like to highlight some of the things that the church is doing good already in ministry with young people. So have you had any experiences with young adults or young people that are already taking part in leadership roles in building and crafting worship?
So I told you about my home church earlier, contemporary worship style. So a lot of our young people there were involved in various aspects of leadership and of planning worship. So we had a drama team that was full of youth and young people and older adults as well. I was on a dance team that was involved young people, older people. So we really tried to like intergenerationally have people participate together in worship.
Great, great. And so talking about some of those things that have already happening, I always like to go to the big hopes as well. So by bringing young adults and young people into the worship planning and the creation of worship, what do you think will happen? What do you think the church can learn and grow from that?
I think that having young people participate in worship, not only bridging kind of a gap that is missing in our church, but I think it brings something beautifully dynamic to our worship. So young people often bring creativity, not that all young people are incredibly creative, but I think that there's an element of creativity in that, but blending that with what's already in place, the worship that's already there, the deep, rich traditions of worship that we already participate in. I think blending those things together and accepting that things will change, things have to change to keep learning and growing. And so when we combine all that together, I think it creates a beautiful picture of authentic worship.
So what I'm hearing from you when you're talking about bringing young adults and young people into the worship creation process, it's not about replacing something with something, but building on and growing and making, I guess, augmenting what is already going on in the traditions and great things that churches are already doing as well.
I don't think we have to start over to make something authentic or new, but I think it's in using what we already have. Sometimes we do need to create something brand new, but oftentimes we can learn from what's already in place and grow and build from that.